military action in Libya. Again, the House gaveling in this morning, and legislative business at 4:45, votes at 6:30. Now to live coverage of the U.S. House.
House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., May 31, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Tim Griffin to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 1:50 p.m. The Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Chairman Ross Layton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize an amazing organization headquartered in my South Florida district, Alphalit International. Alphalit is a faith-based, nonprofit organization that provides education for the world's poorest people. Alphalit offers many programs from basic education, preschool, nutrition, microcredit, and community development, but its core mission is to eliminate the human suffering caused by illiteracy. Alphalit is active in 24 countries, in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and in Portugal. As you would see from these posters here, Mr. Speaker, these are the volunteers and the many participants in Alphalit literacy programs throughout the world. Since its founding in 1961, 7 million individuals have had their lives transformed by Alphalit, because it also provides comprehensive health programs that focus on HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and cholera prevention. This year marks its 50th year of service to the world's most vulnerable population, 50 years of empowering individuals through literacy. It is an impressive achievement, and yet Alphalit knows that there is still much more to be done. Worldwide, 774 million adults lack the ability to read and write. Think of that staggering number, 774 million adults. That is, 1 in 5 adults throughout the world is illiterate, with 2/3 of them being women. In addition, 75 million children have never had the opportunity to go to school, and many attend infrequently or they decide to drop out. As a former Florida certified teacher, I know the importance of a quality education. It is one of the best ways to ensure that a child will have a stable and productive future. Literacy helps bring communities together, and it helps prevent violence and poverty. Last year, Alphalit had over 120,000 students enrolled in its programs, students like the ones that we see here in these posters. Alphalit is always striving to reach more people, and that is why it has started an adult and youth education program in Liberia. They have opened facilities in 10 of Liberia's 15 counties, quite an impressive achievement. Liberia's President, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, has become involved with Alphalit's program. Program participants in Liberia say that Alphalit has taken them from darkness to light. They say that before they could not read a simple street sign or know what a danger sign meant, but now they truly see everything. The Women in Peace Building in Liberia has been active participants in the program that Alphalit offers them. It is a group of Christian women activists that formed during the Liberian Civil War. They come together to pray and discuss issues of concern for their fellow Liberians. Alphalit has provided them with the know-how and with the confidence to continue their work. After 50 years of service and dedication, Alphalett has built a legacy that is truly impressive. Mr. Speaker, I commend Alphalett for all that it has done to fight illiteracy and ignorance throughout our world. Let's hear it for Alphalett and 50 years more of service. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Like most of my colleagues, I had the opportunity to speak to a number of veteran groups on Memorial Day in my district. As always, I was very humble when I stand before those who have fought for this nation and the families whose loved ones did not come back from wars. I would like the House to know that when I talked about the McGovern-Jones amendment to get our troops out of Afghanistan, the statement received a very strong applause, showing the very strong support of the veterans of the 3rd District for getting our troops home from Afghanistan. After my comments, I had many of these veterans to come up individually and want to talk to me, expressing their support and telling me that they agree with McGovern and myself. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the 26 Republicans who voted in favor of the McGovern-Jones amendment last week. I believe we came within 11 votes of passage. Mr. McGovern and I will continue to fight until there is a definite plan to bring our troops home before 2015. Bin Laden is gone and there is zero Taliban presence, al-Qaeda presence in Afghanistan. We have done our job. In closing, I would like to quote Leslie Gilb from his May 9th article in the Wall Street Journal, and I quote, "Afghanistan is no longer a war about vital American security interests. It is about the failure of America's political elite to face two plain facts. The al-Qaeda terrorist threat is no longer centered in that ancient battleground, and the battle against the Taliban is mainly for Afghans themselves." Mr. Speaker, I have with me, as I do many times, the true cost of war is those who die and those who lose their arms and legs and those who are paralyzed and blind for the rest of their life. Beside me is a very, very frank picture of war. It is a Air Force Honor Guard at Dover Air Force Base with the officer in charge saluting the transfer case that is covered with the American flag. I would say, Mr. Speaker, to both parties, how many more have to die in the next 4 or 5 years before we as a nation and we as a Congress wake up to the fact that Karzai is a corrupt leader. He has a corrupt government. We're spending $8.2 billion a month to prop him up. And yet, Mr. Speaker, on this floor of this House, I've been part of many, many debates when people are saying, well, we've got to cut the senior citizens. We can't keep their programs going. We've got to cut the children so they can't get milk in the morning at school. We make sure that Karzai gets his $8.2 billion every month in Afghanistan for what we can't even account for. Mr. Speaker, Mr. McGovern and I will again this summer have an amendment on the floor to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And I will say to the moms and the dads and the wives and the husbands who have lost loved ones in Afghanistan, you have won the war. The war is over. Bin Laden is dead and the Taliban do not exist in Afghanistan anymore. So, Mr. Speaker, before closing, as I do always on the floor, as I look at this poster with the flag-draped coffin, I will ask God to please bless our men and women in uniform. I will ask God to please bless the families of our men and women in uniform. I will ask God in His loving arms to hold the families who've given a child dying for freedom in Afghanistan and Iraq. I will ask God to please bless the House and Senate that we will do what is right in the eyes of God for His people in this great nation. I will ask God to please give wisdom, strength, and courage to President Obama that he will do what is right in the eyes of God for this nation. And I will say 3 times, God please, God please, God, please continue to bless America, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until 2 p.m. today.